There's one fear that keeps salon owners broke. It's not fear of failure. It's not fear of not being good enough. It's not even fear of competition. It's the fear of people leaving. It's that whisper that hits your gut when the notification pops up on your phone. Hey, can we talk? Because you already know what that means. And instantly, your stomach drops. You start replaying every conversation in your head like, did I say something wrong? Did they feel unappreciated? Did I miss something? But here's the truth: the only thing scarier than someone leaving is building a salon that only works if they stay, because that fear keeps you stuck. It keeps you clinging, overworking, and truly operating from survival instead of leadership. So it's truly the fear that keeps you from raising prices, from delegating, from building systems, because somewhere deep down, you believe your peace depends on somebody else's loyalty. And today, we're breaking that pattern, because the salons that grow the fastest aren't the ones that keep everyone forever.
Yeah, I love that. They're truly the ones that build systems so strong, that are systems that are strong enough or even better um, to never break when someone leaves. It only gets better. And if you want to make sure that your systems are strong enough or even better to never waste another week training someone new, you've got to go to milliondollarbeautypro.com. Check that out, because there's a little chant that Lindsay and I like to say is we've seen the score, and team-based beauty pros earn millions more. Love that. Hey, Lindsay, you said you got the text, or the text, people will text, hey, can we
Mhm.
talk? How about when you're driving home and there's a salon near your house and you see you see one of your team members moving their stuff into a new space? That counts too, right?
Yeah, it does. Yep, I remember when you witnessed that, Jen. That was a
Yeah.
great day.
So, guys, when
Mm.
someone leaves, most owners think the fear is about money, right? They're losing
Mhm.
revenue, they're losing gas, they're losing momentum. But truly, underneath that is something deeper. It's actually identity fear. It's the voice that says, I'm a failure because they didn't stay. And we
Mhm.
make their departure mean something about us. What? Isn't that so crazy? It's like we
Mhm.
attach our worth as a leader to their decision to stay or to go. I remember early on when every time someone left, it almost felt like rejection, especially in my early days. And I'd smile and say, congratulations, I'm happy for you. But then, I felt like crying in my car at times too after they left the building. And truly, I wasn't crying over the loss of income. I was crying over the story about what I made up about what it meant, that maybe I wasn't enough, or that maybe they didn't believe in what I was building, or that maybe I should stop training people so well because they just leave.
Yeah. But here's what I've learned after leading hundreds of stylists: turnover doesn't expose your worth. It really exposes your system.
Mhm.
So, Jen, I feel like we can all relate to that same feeling that you just talked about. We've all made up some stories about what it meant in the past. But, the truth is, if the business falls apart when someone leaves, it's not because they were too important. That's not true, you guys. It's because your
Mhm.
structure wasn't strong enough to support transition. And that's actually so empowering when you think about it. Because if the issue isn't people, it's process, then that means that you can fix it. So you have all of the power back, and when you stop taking departures personally and start treating them as feedback, you stop reacting like an employee and start leading like a CEO. Because let's be honest, fear makes us do weird things. So like when we fear losing someone, we start bending the rules. We'll maybe overcompensate or just really just hold on too tight. We start protecting relationships instead of protecting results. So we'll say things like, I'll just let her do her own schedule. It's easier than confrontation. Or, you know, I'll cover that client because she's having a hard week. Or I don't want to push too hard. I don't want her to leave. I've even heard gotten feedback that maybe the goals are too hard to reach, and had people say, "Are they too hard to reach?" Maybe some of this sounds familiar to you. But here's the cost of that fear. It quietly erodes your authority, your boundaries, and ultimately your bottom line. And when you lead from fear instead of having standards, you teach your team that your love is negotiable and that your leadership is optional. And the irony behind all of this is the very behavior meant to keep people happy often pushes them away because they lose that clarity of what it looks like to get to the next stage. They don't have any accountability, and that ultimately breaks their trust.
Mhm. I'll never forget one time working with a salon owner who said, I can't imagine my business without her. And she's like, that stylist was talented, but she was also running the show. And so the owner's days revolved around her mood swings, her needs, her preferences.
Mm,
And yes, when she left, I remember her saying it hurt. But 6 months later, that salon was actually thriving. And the owner then came to us and said, hey, I didn't realize how much energy I was giving to the fear of losing her until she was gone. And sometimes that thing that you're scared to lose is the thing standing in your way to the next level. Ooh, that's good. Let me say that again. Sometimes that thing that you're scared to lose is the thing standing in the way of your next level.
yeah, that is so good, Jen. I've also seen this play out in another way, and it's sneaky. A salon owner hires a new beauty pro on their team, a new service provider, and they instantly think she's going to save the day or he's going to save the day, and maybe they have a big following on Instagram, or maybe, you think that they've got that it factor, or, maybe they tell you that they're bringing in a bunch of clients, or, they've done some branding, or they just have some buzz, and so, we've seen an owner relax, for maybe what they think is the first time in months, thinking their problem is finally solved. But here's the truth: no one person will ever save your salon, except for you as the salon owner. No
Mm,
one person is, because a salon isn't built on one superstar.
mhm,
It's built on systems. It's built on really truly creating that teamwork, and also creating consistency for your team, for your guests, for everyone, because you can always spot when someone's starting to believe that they are the business, because you see a huge language shift. And it's with two words, it goes from our to my, so they'll start saying things like my clients, my VIPs, my skills, my Instagram, and when that happens, it's a red flag, because the moment that someone forgets that iron sharpens iron, their ego starts to outgrow their gratitude. They forget that they didn't get where they are because of only them. They got there because they were surrounded by the right people in the right systems inside of your salon that supported their growth. You guys, that's when the countdown begins, you know, because pride always walks out before partnership does. So if you ever notice that shift on your team, don't panic. It's truly the time to start to lead that person. You've got to pull them back to the vision, remind them how they got to this place in the first place, what makes the salon strong is having that collaboration, that humility, that structure. And that's why they have so many loyal, thriving guests in the salon, because it's that environment that has created it. It's not one person that's created it. You
So
know,
good. I love
yeah, I
that
was
you
just
said
going to
that
say
with
the ones who don't learn that, they're usually the next ones to go. So, like, if you
that's
see
so
that, you
true.
know they're about to go.
You're about to go. Yep, you're so right, Lindsay.
Mhm.
That's so true. And when you think about it, the fear of leaving is really the fear of people leaving, and better yet, is really the fear of like losing control
Mm.
because control truly feels safe. And you say to yourself, hey, if I can control who stays, I can control the outcome. But the truth is, you guys, control is exhausting and temporary. You cannot control who stays. You can only control how prepared you are when they leave. And truly that's why systems are what give you peace. If you think about one of the most popular fast food restaurants, Chick-fil-A, like they don't rely on unicorn employees. They rely on repeatable training and cultural systems that work, whether it's an 18-year-old cashier or a 10-year veteran. And
Mhm.
that's truly what we like to call freedom leadership. You lead through structure, not through stress. And it's the moment that your systems are stronger than your emotions, you stop being reactive and start being resilient. And that's exactly what we teach in Million Dollar Beauty Pro. We show you how to build a business that's unshakable. So even when someone leaves, like your culture, your income, and leadership stand firm. Because fear loses its power when you build a foundation that cannot be rocked.
Mm. That's good, Jen. Fear loses its power when you've built a foundation that can't be rocked. That's
Mhm.
perfect. Really, we should talk about what is the practical side. What do we do when someone leaves? Like, how can we create that foundation, like you mentioned, that's so strong, that fear can't even shake it? Because,
Mhm.
the truth is, when someone leaves, most salon owners panic. They over explain it to their team, they get caught up in the emotions, or they try to convince the person to stay, or they take it personally, and the entire salon feels the energy shift. But the reality is, departures are inevitable. You can either let them drain your business or strengthen it. And that's why we created the departure process guide. It's what we use in our own salons and the salons inside a salon business school. It's incredible. It's a 3-step system to protect your peace, your brand, and your culture when someone exits. So, the first thing that you want to do is you want to protect the guest experience. Reassign clients quickly and gracefully. And you'll want to use language that builds trust with the guest, like, hey, we're so grateful for you. Your service provider, or the last service provider you saw, is no longer here, but we already have a plan to make sure that you're totally taken care of. And that doesn't mean you're like going to withhold any information from them, but like you want them to know, like, hey, we are a team, we work together as a team here, we already have a plan to take care of you. And then next, you want to make sure that you're protecting the team culture. So right away, announce it calmly and directly to the team. So you could say something like, you may already know service provider so and so is no longer with our salon company. You might be feeling sad, or maybe you're feeling relieved to hear this news. Either way is okay. She's chosen a new path and we wish her well. And our focus is on making sure our guests and each one of you feel supported through this transition. That helps you eliminate gossip by setting the tone immediately. And the third thing that you want to do is protect the brand standards. So make sure you remove access to that former service provider close accounts, transition any of their resources. Just, keep it professional and don't take it personal. And here's the secret that most people miss. It's to start with gratitude. So when someone tells you they're leaving, tell them, say, thank you for letting me know. Like, first, it diffuses the emotion, and it also anchors you as the calm leader in the room. That one sentence communicates confidence, safety, and maturity. I'll never forget one day I had a service provider meet me outside, and they told me to take a deep breath before they were about to give me the news. And, I'm not making fun of them or the situation, but it did make me giggle a little inside because I thought I've never been a reactive leader. And so there's no need for a deep breath. So I said, oh, I'm totally great. What did you want to share with me? And they told me, and I said, thank you so much for letting me know. And, we got to move on peacefully. But, it took a while to get there as a leader. And, having the cheat code to get there faster always makes everything better, because we say, hey, you can, spend 40 years to try to figure out something that could take you one day. So if you want a copy of the departure process guide with our exact scripts, checklists, and, really our communication templates, go ahead and text the word departure. That's DEPARTURE to 469-283-5590. Because the moment someone leaves, it doesn't have to be a crisis. It can be a defining moment for you inside of your leadership.
So good. So like truly, you guys, you can't stop people from leaving, but you can stop being afraid of it. I think in the book, Dr. Ben Hardy talks about subtraction is a gift.
Mhm.
Wow. And when I heard that, I was like, that's so true. Subtraction is a gift. And so, when you think about that, here are some ways that you can future proof your salon as well. So, build faster training systems so new hires ramp up in weeks, not months. Yes, weeks, not months. You
Mhm.
want to create those leadership layers so knowledge doesn't bottleneck with one person. Making sure that you have that leadership team in place. You want to use the data, your pre-book rates, your retail percentages, your PAR scores. So PAR is usually pre-book, average ticket, and retail to service. So like looking at those scores to spot disengagement before it even becomes
Mhm.
departure. And then you want to lead from clarity, not chaos. And here's the mindset shift that changes everything. Your salon isn't a prison, it's actually a platform. And when people feel like they can grow with you, they don't need to leave to expand. They evolve within your ecosystem. And that's what Million Dollar Beauty Pro was designed to create, a business model that actually grows leaders, not turnover. Because we've seen the score, and team based beauty pros earn millions more.
Ain't that the truth, Jen Booth? I love that. I'll never forget the time, the first time somebody that I had mentored told me that they were leaving. They were talented, kind, and someone I'd poured into for years. And so when they told me, I got an instant pit in my stomach. And I said, I'm happy for you, but inside I was crushed, and for weeks I would think about it off and on, and one day while I was updating the schedule, I realized something. I was so afraid of losing people that I was losing myself, and that moment became a turning point because that person leaving forced me to finally build the system I'd always been too busy to create. It pushed me to clarify our training, to really strengthen our brand, and to build confidence in the team that stayed. That departure, what I thought was a breakdown, it truly became a breakthrough. And that's the truth. Fear loses its power when you turn it into structure. And pain becomes purpose when you channel it into your process. So, if you're in that season right now, if someone's leaving or you're scared someone might, let this be your reminder. You can't control who stays, but you can own how you lead.
Mhm. So good. So if this episode resonated with you, share with another salon owner who's ready to trade fear for freedom. And don't
Mhm.
forget, you guys, text departure, DEPARTURE, to 469 283 5590. Again, that's 469 283 5590 to grab your free departure process guide. And if you're truly ready to build the kind of systems that protect your peace, your profits, and your people, head on over to milliondollarbeautypro.com. Again, that's milliondollarbeautypro.com, because we've seen the score: team based beauty pros earn millions more.